Let me start. All right, folks. Good evening again. Thank you for being here. Once again, you are with the Freedom Friday Forum, forward to you by the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division, number 330, UNIA-ACL Rehabilitating Committee 2020. This evening, this Freedom Friday evening, July 25th, we have a subject matter that is of import to everyone of African descent, and not even of African, everyone anywhere, when it comes to family relations. Oh man, time is running out for us actually, for us being African everywhere, because a lot of things are happening. And we have to continue to work hard to rebuild our families. And so this theme tonight is time is running out, the quest to rebuild our families. And again, we have with us Dr. Koko, Dr. Rasayon, and he is going to delve into some things which you may have heard or not heard. Most of all, I think you may not have heard. He's gonna put it together for you. If you don't wake up right now, well, I don't think you'll ever wake up. This is time for you to wake up, and Dr. Rasayon will help. Now, first, let me go through the rituals, the opening rituals for the UNIA-ACL, as we normally do when we start any program that we have. And first, we start with the official UNIA pledge to the flag. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered black children. I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism, and I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail until all black people are free and united through one God, one aim, one destiny. And let me remind you of what we in the UNIA-ACL is all about. And this is always good to bring to you the preamble of the UNIA-ACL Constitution, which overall describes why the UNIA was formed and why we are where we are today. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society, and is founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of the Negro peoples of the world. And the members pledge themselves to do all in their power to conserve the rights of their noble race and to respect the rights of all mankind, believing always in the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. The motto of the organization is one God, one aim, one destiny. Therefore, let justice be done to all mankind, realizing that if strong oppresses the weak, confusion and discontent will ever mark the path of man. But with love, faith, and charity towards all, the reign of peace and plenty will be heralded into the world, and the generations of man shall be called blessed. Now, I had decided to read some other things as opening remarks, but we've already lost one quarter or 15 minutes or more. So let me go straight into what we need to be done. Let me introduce to you Dr. Niyana Mfundi Rasayon. And you know, we call him Dr. Koko, Baba Koko. And he has been person in this Washington, D.C. metropolitan area for a very long time. He's a lecturer and an activist championing the humanity of dispossessed and marginalized people. And he's a board certified fellow and diplomat in African-centered Black psychology. So that alone should tell you why we're here and why we have him on this evening. Because time is running out, and the quest to rebuild our Black families is really here at this moment. And he will give us his thoughts on that matter. Dr. Koko, good evening. Thank you for being here. And first of all, let me also remind you that I have with me I am the host, Baba Mosi Matsimila, and co-host is Baba Congo Africa. He's the vice president of the UNIA-ACL RC2020 Division 330. He's here with us. And so, Dr. Koko, I'll open up with you. Just give us your thoughts.
All right, Baba. The first thing I like to do is ask those individuals that are present that are obviously over the age of 65, because clearly I'm at that zone. I need you guys to give me permission to continue talking before I actually populate the screen with my slides.
You may continue, my brother.
You have permission.
Okay, Asante Sana, thank you so much. I hope this actually opens up literally the way I want it to open up. And if it doesn't, I'll pop it open another way, okay? Looks like I'm going to have to pop it open another way. Do we have a visual on the screen?
We do.
Okay, I think perhaps you will see at the top, time is running out. The quest to rebuild our families. I want to say, Asante Sana, for you all to give me permission to speak. Naturally, anytime you're in the presence of your elders, traditional African societies and traditional societies that predate European history, they always recognize that one is not allowed to speak until they acknowledge their elders and their ancestors. Hence my request to get permission. And I want to say, Asante Sana, for you guys, allow me to have permission to speak. And it is always my pleasure and privilege to share my perspective as my human vessel serves as a conduit to share information that I deem to be oftentimes channeled. That's not in the spooky Hollywood sense. It means in terms of having deep reflection on information and trying to beseech other ancestors to give me guidance in terms of how to share it. So with that in mind, I'm going to repeat my gratitude to the brothers of the 21st century who carry the flag of Garvey, who carry the flag of Pan-Africanism, who carry the flag of the collective identity of melanin-dominant people throughout the world. And I just wanted to reiterate, as the brother said the term, I want to tease him because he knows me well enough to know, Congo and Baba, mostly they know that I will tease you about the word negra, all right? And as Marvi, i.e. the UNIA, negra meant black. Vanilla brothers and sisters, as always, had difficulty pronouncing terms. That's one of the reasons why they forbade us from having and keeping our names, because our names basically imbue the power of our sense of identity, which bespeaks the reality of what we have to discuss. Time is running out, and the quest to rebuild our families is absolutely critical. At the bottom of this slide, where you see flanked by my old school reflection when Black Panther was released, that's my militant attire. Militant attire means I recognize that we're at war, and I realize that as stealth as a panther had to be, though it was captured in that movie, this is the way we always present ourselves. We have to be stealth, even in the daylight, because we're dealing with a very pathological consciousness that Sister Ani Marimba referred to as the Yurugu, which has to do with basically a manifestation which appears to be a carbon-based life form, but it has no spirit and it has no soul. So as you see Sasa on the left and Zamani on the right, Sasa represents the time that we are now in, the time where we can say on the calendar, this week, that week, yesterday, XYZ, things that we have conscious awareness of in our day-to-day living. Conversely, the Kiswahili term Zamani means the time that connects us with our ancestors, that connects us with the other side, where we can communicate with the entire archive of the lineage of all that has come before us that connects with our bloodline. I thought it would be very appropriate for us to have an hourglass, because that's a really visual reminder that the sands of time are always in motion. And contrary to popular belief, though we think that we can actually recycle the time, we cannot. Hence, that's why you have an hourglass. You turn it over and the sands come through and an hour passes. So as we move forward, let's take this deep dive into why the quest to rebuild our families is so critical. At any time, someone may have a burning question, even a burning comment. I invite you to do one or two things. You can either share it with us audibly, or perhaps you can go into, I think the chat is available to put it in, or you can make a note. And when you think there is a pause, feel free to chime that in. The brother tweaked the slide, tweaked the quote unquote flyer, and we now have a complete representation of the people of color throughout the world. And you may not see any of your vanilla brothers and sisters there because they are actually a derivation of us as a result of the glacial epoch, the two-cradle theory. They lost their melanin content, and as a result of them losing their melanin content, they lost their consciousness. That's why from time to time, when I'm talking to some of my pro-Black colleagues, they want to know why I refer to these disconnected hybrid siblings as vanilla brothers and sisters. It's because to us, even though we are spiritually mature, we unfortunately have the tolerance with our spiritual maturity to not reprimand and redirect the pathological denizens on the planet that Marimba referred to as the Yurugu. It's almost like you have a demonic child. And though the person presents as a child, that's why it says almost like you have a demonic child, but you're dealing with an adult that has a nature that is clearly indicative of a pathological gene. No sense of family, no sense of connectedness to the fabric of the human family, no sense of connectedness to nature. Hence my reference to Diop and the two-cradle theory. As a result of them having been socialized in the Ice Age in the Caucasus Mountains, they completely became disconnected with nature. So again, this is why I'm reminding us that our time is running out. And we're on a quest to rebuild our families because we have allowed our families to be defined by another derivation, a hybrid version of humans. And as always, I think I need to revisit to clarify for you what a human is. I'm choosing to do that because to my knowledge, in all of my studies, I had not come across a definition for humans consistent with the one that I'm about to share with you. So I think it's critical that we use this as a foundation. Humans. And before I continue to expand on it, let me summarize for a couple of people that may not know my background. I'm a behavioral neuroscientist. I was trained at all HBCUs. That means North Carolina A&T. That means Fisk University, Meharry Medical College, and HU, Howard University. So I want to be clear that I'm not a product of one of those quotas. I'm not a product of some vanilla institution thinking that they did my person a favor by allowing me to come in and get my credentials through their dynamics of presenting the illusion that they wanted to level the playing field. So I want to be very clear. I reference the behavioral neuroscientist because I'm about to take you into a little dive dealing with biology and neurobiology. You see highlighted on the screen, and I just want to ask for the sake of redundancy and clarity, is there an image on the screen that has the word humans on the left side at the top? Okay, great. So let me just share with you what a human is, because we're always talking about race. Race is a social construct. It was developed by a group of disconnected Caucasian males to polarize different groups of ignorance among the human family in order to exploit and colonize all of the resources of the world to be channeled through, I think it was called the British or the East Indian Company when they were trying to rob India, and also in America, a Eurocentric mindset or Eurocentric code of learning, which is always tied to that European, what I'm going to refer to as toxic masculinity. Hence, that's the reason why when people were pursuing higher education beyond the fundamental schooling to understand the agricultural and industrial society, vanilla brothers or these Caucasian males had the audacity to try and restrict education to men only, primarily Caucasian men, which means they were completely oblivious to the fact that Timbuktu, and prior to them being introduced to the Renaissance, We already had schools of higher learning throughout the continent of Alkebulan that educated our women, educated our children, and obviously educated our men. So we had institutions of higher learning before these people crawl out the Caucasus Mountains, i.e. the caves. I want to be very clear about that. So what is a human? Human, hydrocolloidal, carbon-based, pseudo-autonomous, sentient, photobioelectromagnetic transducer, aerobic type, eumelanin dominant, fail or mixed eufale melanin, bipedal, cerebro-driven life form of organized colonies of bacteria. And see, usually when I give people the abbreviated version, they oftentimes try and phantom its application. So I want you to know that when I refer to you as eumelanin dominant or fail melanin, eumelanin means you are a dark person. You come from the land where the sun toasted your skin, the land where Europeans are always going on the planet to try and capture the sunlight so that they can try and at least excite the actual fail melanin in their bodies to become bronze or brown. And you see a reference to me talking about a cerebro-driven life form. That means that your cortex, your brain, in alignment with your heart, governs how you navigate life on the planet. And the reference to me telling you about an organized colony of bacteria, I'll simplify it by pointing out to you that the protoplasm, and you being a tellurian, that means a surface dweller, you have an intimate relationship with the sunlight. Hence, you are a bioelectromagnetic organism, which means you transduce the energy from the sun and whatever micronutrients you gather from your habitat and your environment, and you breathe and inhale and exhale air. Hence, you are an aerobic type life form, which means you breathe. Most of us are very familiar with aerobic exercises. So I want to be very clear when I make a comment about bacteria. People don't like to acknowledge the fact that we are an amalgamation of a sophisticated, phenomenally organized cellular matrix, weaving together who we are based upon those things that we associate with amino acids, which are broken down further into genetic material, DNA, and then upgraded from DNA, classic genetic material, to chromosomes, which means colored bodies. And then from chromosomes actually interact in the matrix of the cellular network of humans to give rise to human life. Hence the term that I like to play with when I'm talking to people. I'll use the word baby, which is taken from old Kemetic terms, but are not tied to traditional Euro or Indo-European languages. Baby, ba, and ba means the spirit has now manifest. So the baby is here, or the ba be, which means that the spirit has now incarnated in a state of infancy to adjust to the physical body. So as I highlighted earlier, there are no races other than the human race, and I'm not going to take you into the Twilight Zone on a bizarre trip to tell you about Nibiru or the other life forms that are outside the frame of reference for Eurocentric scientists to talk about. But they'll probably talk about them a lot more as we get into the year 2030. And this is why I'm telling you how critically important it is for us to stabilize our families. And when I show you a few metrics momentarily, you'll understand what's happening to melanin dominant people that reside in the states that we refer to as the United States of America. I want you to take note, pay close attention to what you see highlighted here at the right. And Roman numerals are always confusing. That's why the phonetic or the Arabic numeral system, which you can attach to the descendants of Sumeria or the descendants of the Dravidian people, are the original inhabitants of the planet before Europeans went all over the place and started renaming everybody. Those individuals were not using these numbers that you see here, Roman numerals. Those are the most difficult numerals to try and calculate and figure out things with. But I'm putting it here to highlight something for you. You can see, as I'm telling you, time is running out, the quest to rebuild our families. This would make you think that at the midnight hour, your world is coming to an end. But I want you to understand a lot of things that you see happening in today's world are distractions. Some of it is nature reminding the quote unquote individuals that control a lot of the vast resources on the planet that they are not in charge. But we oftentimes find ourselves caught up in the wars that they create and the distractions that they create, and we lose focus of what's happening to our own. I'll just give you a simple example. We hear everything in the world now, unfortunately, about what's happening in Ukraine, among the Ukrainian people, and what's going on with Russia. but you don't get any detailed information about what's happening to the children of Haiti. You don't get any detailed information about what's happening in Central Africa. And you don't even get accurate information about what's happening in Gaza, because all of those people are individuals that will be more specifically identified as mixed melanin or melanin dominant people. And in a few moments, I'm going to share with you why it's so critically important that we understand the relationship of melanin dominant people to the quest to stabilize and rebuild and save our families. Because the fact of the matter is, if we don't save our families, we may as well start getting ready to say time is up. That's why the hourglass is here to let you know time is running out, which means we still have time. And I also want to remind you that what you see happening externally here, those are the distractions that I just referenced, but the real damage is being done within. These folk have begun to delve deeply into manipulating our DNA. And when I say manipulating it, I mean putting things into the human equation that will modify and compromise the ability of our genetic material to function optimally and allow us to be who we are. And they are pretty good at it. And the reason why they're pretty good at it is because they oftentimes use the mindset of the genius among our people under different rubrics and titles of employment in dealing with genetics, dealing with microbiology, or even dealing with the discipline that's built into my discipline of behavior neuroscience psychology, to keep us in this feedback loop of nonsense to make us oblivious to what's going on right before our eyes. So just a summary to remind you about aligning your consciousness with your ancestors, which is what we absolutely have to do. And I've done a couple of lectures on how we need to tune into that, but I want you to tune into the terms again. You can see Sasa. Believe it or not, when you look at a pyramid, it's in Sasa time, all right? But when you look at the ancestors that actually constructed those units, put those things in place, you're in Zamani time, because that's the realm of where your ancestors are. And we've already had lectures about your ancestors are here, you've just forgotten how to talk to them. And just like in the movie, when I made a reference to Mulan about the dragon and Mulan's character trying to connect with her ancestors, and just like in the movie Black Panther, when you saw T'Challa going to talk to his ancestors, he went into the realm of what we call Duat, to be on the other side of where incarnate souls navigate and do things. That's the reason why I want you to be mindful of the fact that your consciousness is not restricted to what's inside of your head. Your consciousness is outside of your head. As a matter of fact, your consciousness is so phenomenal that you can be in an environment that you don't particularly like, and some things will come into your consciousness that you call intuitions, and it won't be verbalized, it won't be clear, it'll just be an intuitive feeling. I need to leave here. I don't feel right being here. The same thing happens in our relationships. And because there is no terminology in place to speak to it, I'm going to have to share with you a couple of terms that I basically had to arrange to talk about. It's something in the human brain that is documented as mirror neurons, but it's something that's of the human brain that's not documented, and I call those Bluetooth digital neurons, because they're Bluetooth, which means they are fluctuating in the spheres of all energy, which allows you to have these random acts of communication, which oftentimes are not random. They occur with you connecting with your ancestors. Twins do it all the time. You can have twins hundreds and thousands of kilometers apart, and twin A can get smacked, and twin B will get a sensation, a burning sensation, or some type of stimulation that something has happened to the other twin. Now that literally is basically being toyed with under what we refer to today with our technology under Bluetooth. But you're familiar with how it works. When you take your cell phone and place it next to someone else's cell phone and literally send a message to their cell phone, and you do not need the internet to do that. It's tied to proximity. Now, let me take you to the slide to start dancing with the music that we're going to engage with greater detail. Self-identity is critical to family stability and health relationships. self-identity. Hence me telling you earlier about you being a pseudo-autonomous hydrocolloidal life form. I said pseudo-autonomous because the average human walking on the face of the earth, they really do think they have free will. Even the average black person thinks that he or she has free will. You can make choices beneath the rubric of what you perceive to be free will, but oftentimes you're unaware that those things that you navigate have been put before you as choices. And you forget that you have another sense inside of you that can bypass all of those activities. And the reason why you forget it is because you are constantly distracted with the realm of physicality. And in a moment when I pull up chakras, the Kundalini and the force of energy in the human body, I'm going to take a deeper dive into that. So, how SALS, the system of white supremacy, undermines economic empowerment and financial solvency. You haven't got to be a genius to know you live in America, you got to get paid. If you're not getting paid, you need to have someone else that's getting paid to share those resources with you. Because you live on a planet that's literally tied, you live in a society that's literally tied to objects. And objects in this society are not something that are freely exchanged out of free will. Remember, I told you dealing with the Urugu. And the Urugu is an immature derivation, hybridization of humans as a result of having been victims of that glacial epoch relating to the two cradle theory. And the two cradle theory, unfortunately, put those people in an environment where a great deal of them wound up with calcified pineal glands and poorly operating central nervous systems and major problems with micronutrients coming from the earth because there's not too much stuff you can grow in that damn ice age. Hence, they were doing a lot of food gathering that related to, believe it or not, there was some cannibalism going on there, okay? And you're not going to get anybody to talk to you about that in detail, but they didn't have access to food. They weren't able to grow anything out of the earth. They weren't able to fish and get anything. So a number of things happened. Hence, you may not have heard it, but they have put it literally in their lexicon of communicating. They tell you only the strong survive. And then they add to that survival of the fitter, which means who have the most tools to destroy and control and conquer, they are perceived as being fitter. Even though the Urugu will remind you, I mean, if I have a machine gun and you have a slingshot, chances are very likely that I can despirit you before you despirit me. Because those things about Samson and what's the brother's name that cast a stone and hit him in his forehead, his third eye, and took his life force from him? The Jews are always talking about him. What's his name? The little David and Goliath, right? Because he had a special pebble and a stone, and he hit Goliath right between his eyebrows and rendered him unconscious. But I can tell you some martial art techniques. If I went beneath the bridge of your nose and created a substantial blow, at least about 20 pounds of thrust, I could render you unconscious, break your nose, and probably send you into a coma, depending upon the angle that I hit your nose to render you unconscious. Now, I want to bring a colleague of mine into the equation to share something with you because we're going to talk about it momentarily. You see it highlighted at the bottom of the screen. And I hope that when she finally looks at the video, she doesn't tell me I mispronounced her name. Dr. Ayo Sakai, that's the sister that was at Sanko for a few, I would say a couple of months ago to launch a book for one of my colleagues. But she coined a term that she referred to as linguistic imperialism. And linguistic imperialism is a term, and this term actually addressed the enslavement and inherent constrictions of the acceptable lexicon to discuss the world that melanin dominant humans have to navigate. And because that jargon is linguistic imperialism, it pretty much cripples us from allowing us to talk about our reality. If you try to Google certain things online and you put certain things in your search engine, all of the new AI that they have in place now might pull up algorithms to give you very little of the information that you really need. And as you're getting very little of the information that you need because it's coming from online, you may be inclined to think that, well, I got it online. I want to remind you, you need to go to at least 5 links when you're trying to find some information that is peculiar and unique to the journey of the enslaved inhabitants, once enslaved inhabitants of the USA, who came across during the passage. And there were a number of us already here among the First Nation people, the descendants of the Olmecs, the descendants of the Mayans, the descendants of the First Nation people here on Turtle Island. They were already here. So there are a number of melanin dominant people that were here, and they are not a product of the passage or the slave trade. That's what our vanilla brothers and sisters will have you to believe. One of the reasons why you find so many black people completely ignorant to the fact that their origin is tied intimately and genetically to Alkebulan, or the continent that we refer to as Africa, and the place that has 54 countries, because they have been so well trained that they have become disillusioned from the reality that allows them to be who they are. Okay? Now I'm going to tell you a little crazy joke. I was looking at a short video of a sister from continental Africa making fun of one of her African-American girlfriends, because she had invited her over for Thanksgiving dinner. Now they have a version of it online, but the story was about her talking about she wasn't going to eat those things that she had as appetizers at the dinner table for Thanksgiving because they didn't really come from a chicken. And she said, what part of the chicken did you get these things from? And her friend said, well, everybody likes nuggets. These nuggets are appetizers. And she said, in my country, we know the chicken. Not only do we know the chicken, we know the rooster. As a matter of fact, we knew the rooster so well that we actually chose to eat some of the rooster's family. So we know them. We know we're eating chickens. And at any time that we were preparing chickens, none of my relatives ever pulled anything out of a chicken called a nugget. So where did these things come from? And so she wouldn't eat them. And the sisters were telling her that they had come from McDonald's. And she would say there is no particular species of bird that she knows of in continental Africa called a McDonald. As a matter of fact, you think about McDonald, you think about something that probably has an Irish connotation, even though we know the formula, Kentucky Fried Chicken, was stolen from African-American women. But the point I'm making is the sister said, I'm not eating that because that's not a part of the chicken. So I don't know what this nugget thing is that you call part of the chicken. And if you guys were to do some deep research, you find out that it's made out of a whole bunch of other crap that has very little to do with a chicken. So all of these things that I'm telling you now can be tied to linguistic imperialism. These people rename things and we go along with whatever they rename them. Whatever they call, for example, the classic place where people are oftentimes talking about meeting to talk about international issues that cannot be resolved at NATO, they'll say, we're going to meet in Istanbul. And Istanbul is obviously intimately tied to Turkey, but you call Turkey Turkey. Because another people were having trouble pronouncing Turkey, they called it Turkey. Back to me telling you about Negro being negra, which meant black. So as we're trying to navigate our reality utilizing a jargon that neglects to acknowledge who we are, I'll also remind you of one of my dear friends' dominant language, happens to be Farsi or Persian, and there is a word in Farsi or Persian that does not give a blank about your gender. It depends upon what you're doing, and that word is oo. Who can be a guy, who can be a girl, who can be a man, who can be a woman. And then there's specific terms that you use to talk about the man or the woman depending upon the work that they're doing. So again, I'm telling you about the limitations of English, which intimately ties us to linguistic imperialism, which does not allow us to discuss our reality. So here are the reminders again about time. And then we are dealing with a Gregorian calendar. We're not dealing with the old Islamic calendar or the old Chaldean calendar or the old calendars associated with ancient China. We are dealing with a Gregorian calendar. And that's one of the reasons why it's so confusing to identify how many months are in a how many days are in a month. And then you have these extra months that, you know, that the Romans and the Europeans decided to include and screwed up your understanding of October actually not being the quote unquote 8th month. And the reason why I want to be clear about it is because after October, November is the 9th month, December, quote unquote, supposed to be the 10th month, but December is the 12th month. And October is not the 8th month. October becomes what? The 10th month. So these people have screwed up everything when they added one for Julius Caesar and one for St. Augustine, all right? So August and July. Why am I digressing to tell you this? I'm trying to remind you of how intimately tied linguistic imperialism is tied to what we discuss. And I'm warming you up to tell you about the family. Because one of the reasons we have so much difficulty communicating is because we've allowed other people to define our families. I'll give you a concrete example. You ask an African, does he have a half brother? How are you going to have half of a brother? You see, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, this is my half brother. Okay, so does that mean 50% of him not meeting? The other 50% is somewhere else? There's no such thing. Are you following me? Because Europeans will pollute the language with so much chaotic crap tied to, I don't want to say it's tied to wickery, but it's tied to deception and confusion. These people are going to come up again momentarily. They're going to come up again momentarily because Baba Richard King is the brother that took us to a deeper level of understanding what Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was talking about when she talked about calcification of the pineal gland, and Dr. Richard King talked about black dot and melanin dominant humans and the neuromelanin and our special relationship with the neuromelanin and the black dot to the pineal gland, which is associated here. And this is why when I put this slide together, as you can see, I dropped this slide back in 2013 to talk about Baba Richard King, and I refer to him as the Mfundishi Jegna, which means the master teacher of the teachers, to give guidance to those people that think that they are able to teach. Okay? Because we Africans, they don't wrap themselves up unless they've been educated in a European educational system. We don't use the term mentor, because mentor is tied to ancient Greco-Roman civilizations when older Caucasian males took advantage of younger boys. Hence, mentor. Jegna meant someone that was seasoned in battle. They understood battle, and they could teach people how to navigate life because they had the experience. So you can associate that with an apprenticeship. You're going to be in the presence of someone that's wiser than you to give you guidance and direction. But in Europe, in our society today, we'll say, who was your mentor? I didn't have any mentors. I remember when I got accepted to Howard University, and because I'm already out of Howard University, I still got at least 12 transcripts left, and I got my doctorate from Howard University. I remember when I first went to the school for the interview, someone said, they said, Koko, tell us someone in the social sciences, or maybe even psychology, that taught you things about your direction and where you want to go in psychology or psychobiology. They were calling it psychobiology, not neuroscience at that time. I said, my daddy. And they said, well, what has your daddy published? I mean, we're talking about mainstream psychologists and scientists. I said, my father is a scientist at that time, all right? Because he was not allowed to be called an electrical engineer when he did all the things in the military. The radio man opened up his own radio and television repair shop and worked on walkie-talkies and shortwave radio systems for all the vanilla people that couldn't fix them. They would take them to my daddy for my daddy to fix. And I was explaining to them that my father was an engineer. He was also a master of human behavior. Because I remember him jacking my brothers. I had rolled down from Detroit. My father was jacking one of my brothers about putting antenna on top of people's homes. And my brothers were also smart. They had figured out a way to go put antenna on people's homes that did not know how to put antennas on their home. Today, you guys have the internet and you have these satellite dish to feed things into your house. But in the old days, you had to put an aerial on your house, an antenna to pick up the different stations. So my brothers had figured out a way to earn some extra money when my daddy allowed them to be off of work to go and put antenna on people's houses that they were not equipped to do. And they would go and do that. And one of my older brothers said to my daddy, he said, hey, Pops, why you keep allowing all these, he didn't call them vanilla brothers, that wasn't around there. Why you keep allowing all these greedy white folk, white men to take advantage of your talents and skill? I remember my daddy saying, sit down, son. And I was the younger one, so I'm listening. He said, let me tell you something. He said, do you realize that all these white folk that bring me things that they cannot fix, they know I can fix it? So my son, my brother interrupted him. Yeah, but why you don't charge them more money? He said, boy, your television doesn't just turn the volume up. The volume relates to the amount of information that's coming in that you can make sense out of. If it's too loud, you can't make sense out of it. If you tone it down, you can regulate how you handle it. He said, I don't know what you mean. What do it have to do with money? He said, volume, boy. I get all of the work so I can charge them less, so they bring it all to me, and I make out in the long run with the volume because they all bringing it to me. I know that they are basically underpaying me for each particular item I fix, But they all are bringing me their work thinking they're getting over. And he said, they still don't know how simple it is to fix it. So I'm the one that's getting over. They're not getting over on me, son. And he said, you need to understand that. You don't always let your enemy know that you understand how to deal with him, because that will piss him off. And I was young then, and I was chilling. I was like, because I couldn't make sense out of all that stuff. And then it occurred to me, they will always be bringing him this work. And my father was taking care of business. But if you look at the old movie Hidden Figures, you find that sister was not allowed to call herself an engineer until she took some more courses, even though she fixed everything. And Catherine, the one that allowed the U.S. to have their first launch in space with John Glenn, is the one that did the math to check behind the IBM computer that the vanilla boys couldn't even figure out how to program. A sister went and got a book that she literally lifted from the library to tell her how to deal with Fortran. Are you following me? So I'm saying to you, they know who the geniuses are. That's why they trap us with linguistic imperialism, so we can't have conversations with each other. And we don't have conversations with each other because we allow religion to close the door on healthy conversations. When I tell you that I'm Buddhist and I'm a Taoist Muslim, you're like, that ain't in the Bible, okay? But are you a Christian? And I'm like, the Christ didn't call himself a Christian. The Christ was something else. And so why am I bringing up religion? Linguistic imperialism. When you become enslaved to the language of your slave master, you've forgotten that your thinking has been colonized. Therefore, you fail to communicate. And as you fail to communicate, you endorse the pathology of these people. Black Panther, Wakanda. These are guys kicking it on the steps, probably in B-More City. These are the kinds of things that you don't see represented when you see Black families highlighted. I'm about to take a dive into telling you what these things really mean. And if you take a flashback and look at Black Panther, you will see that they kept their technology hidden from the vanilla folk, the white folk. They hid it from them because they knew that if they knew what they had, they were going to try to weaponize it. And that's exactly what they do. When the Asian brothers and the Chinese brothers introduced these people to gunpowder and different colors of minerals that they could put in the gunpowder for fireworks, vanilla people said, we can blow shit up with that. And the Asian brothers were like, but it's basically to celebrate the ancestors, the colors, the stimulation, the light, to let you know that there is life on the other side. Vanilla people are like, no, we can blow up something with that. So tune into where we're about to go with these slides here. Rebuilding the family, who defines one? You see, this is what Hollywood would love to stick back in your face. And this is what the people plugged into Project 25 would like to dance all over the media. These are the families that they want you to look upon as a family. I don't know why it's not a dog in this picture. Because if it was a true family, they'd have a dog somewhere in this picture. Because that's critical to the symbolism of their families. You may not even realize why the dog has such a special relationship. I don't have time to take you on that journey now, but I will tell you that vanilla people will tell you who's man's best friend. He doesn't say it's his woman. He say dog is man's best friend. Do you not hear that all the time? That's his best friend. He's not talking about Lassie or Rin Tin Tin. He's talking about any dog. Now, look at the family, the 21st century family. Now, I'm about to unintentionally step on some people's toes. I'm not stepping on your toes deliberately, but I will inadvertently have to step on your toes because I have to bring something to your attention that you are so disillusioned about that you think someone is against you when they point out things that you are not comfortable talking about because you're dealing with linguistic imperialism. And that linguistic imperialism translates into you polarizing your thoughts into, I'm against you if I say anything that differs from what you've been conditioned to believe in. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, these two brothers here have adopted these children. They are now a family. Okay? But remember, this is the ideal American family. These two sisters here, this is their child, either via adoption or in vitro, in vivo fertilization in a petri dish or somebody dropping something in the room and inserting it in somebody's uterus so that they can have it in their body to actually grow. But the point is, these are the new arenas where we're looking at family. And I think you guys are getting my drift because I'm about to take a deep dive into this. On the other hand, these people that you see here are also melanin dominant people, but they are mixed melanin type people. So they are viewed as not as important as this ideal American family. And I deliberately want you to see this is something straight from the 50s and the 60s. You know, a daughter and a son. You just wait. We're about to get there. And when I get you there, you're going to see why this is the family that's valued. And look, it's almost like the old all-state symbolism. You see the greenery, the grass, they're in good hands. All right? They're on the green earth. These are the families that this country wants to nurture. I'm getting in good trouble now. All right? You all know the brother, the congressman that crossed over. I'm getting in good trouble now. Because when you talk about our truths and don't embrace linguistic imperialism, you are getting in good trouble. So when the ultra-rich members of this planet's billionaire club decide to determine your destiny. Now, I won't even name him, but Steve Jobs is up here. I mean, well, he's not up there. What's the brother's name? With the software. What's his name?
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, all right? And my man is here from Amazon. But I'm going to take you into the journey of letting you know. These are all Caucasian men, by the way. And they're in the billionaire club. Just because Oprah's a member of the billionaire club doesn't mean Oprah makes the kind of decisions that these mega billionaires make, okay? Decisions have been made. Decisions have been made to re-engineer and determine your destiny through a new world order. Now, when we're face to face, I'll be able to chime some music in for you, but I'm not going to try to do it now. But if you look back at Curtis Mayfield's It's a New World Order, all you have to do is listen to it on your own. It's a new world order. He talks about everything from colorism to the sister that's high yellow to the one that's dark brown to the brother that's killing the brother on the street because he doesn't even know that's his brother. That's why I told you a little while ago. If you guys had any footage of what's happening in Haiti right now, you would be able to say it's on the scale of what's happening right now in Gaza. If you had any footage of what's going on in Central Africa right now, if you had any data on what's happening now down in South America, Brazil, and Venezuela, with some of these body snatchers trafficking human organs, your mind would not only be blown, you would be stupefied at the level of pathology that never makes the American news unless vanilla people are injured in the process. So here's the book. And these guys are in the book, and they're better recognized here. These are the control oligarchs, right? And this is the book. If you want to take a picture, you can take a dive on your own and look at it. Exposing the billionaire class, their secret deals, and the globalist plot to dominate your life. And so I talked to some black people like, well, brother, I thought we were going to talk about the black family. We're going to talk about relationships in a second here. But your relationships, in a moment, you're going to see how intimately they are tied to your stability or lack thereof in life. And this brother, David Graham, all right, he created a condensed version of it, one of the primary editors of The Atlantic. And I got this book as soon as it was released, the 22nd of this year, 2025. The project, he breaks it down. The project, and I'm talking about Project 25. Because all of you guys are worried about the orange man and what he's doing. Now he's probably somewhere in Scotland looking at a golf course or something or whatever. And the orange man has sneakers that are gold sneakers. He has a cologne for girls and guys, or for men and women. He has imagery of himself on it, like an Oscar. A dude making a cologne for a woman. I'm talking about the Donald. He has watches that he's selling. This dude is even selling Bibles and Bitcoins. And we are still, unfortunately, caught in a quagmire trying to figure out how to navigate around linguistic imperialism. At this very moment, he's still in the process of pimping Columbia University. And he's upset with Harvard University because they didn't agree to play the game. Now, let me summarize some things relating to the Project 25. I just told you. The authors of Project 25 state, we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. If the left allows it to be. He said it in July of 2024 interview. Now be mindful. The revolution that the last Porsche used to talk about will not be televised. And the fact of the matter is, the revolution will not be televised because the revolution is taking place right now before your eyes. As I'm telling you, the clock is ticking and time is of the essence. When you got groups of guys running around that are basically hired mercenaries, snatching your Latino brothers from the street, they don't even identify themselves. And then people are saying, we're going to come down hard on sanctuary cities. I'm getting in some good trouble now. All right. I know I'm getting in good trouble. And I want you guys to remember that I'm consciously getting in good trouble for the family. So look, during the summer of 2024, the BET Awards on June 30th, Taraji Henson, she said she encouraged people to learn about the Project 25. It's not a game. Now, remember when the Donald came in office, he said he didn't know anything about it. But if you were to read anything related to the Project 25, what's been happening in this country is taken like you have a playbook for the NFL or the some major soccer team. Literally, they are calling it play-by-play from a playbook. The Donald is not even the coach. He's the figurehead. Are you feeling me? But because he has such a big ego, he's riding around on his ego because he really is the little boy who wanted to be a king. But I want to remind you, that little boy that wanted to be a king was introduced to you guys a couple of decades ago in The Omen as Damien walking into the White House. And he's right before your eyes today, and you still think it was a Hollywood myth. They told you what was coming. Curtis Mayfield told you about the New World Order. I'm not talking about some Twilight Zone stuff from the Illuminati. I'm talking about reality check, and it's summarized in this particular book that I told you about, The Project. Flash back and look at it again. The Project. The Project summarizes what the control oligarchs are putting in place. Now, we're just getting warm, people. We're just getting warm. Because I'm going to make sure I give us plenty of time to have comments and questions. So as you take a deep dive into the book, which is basically building on what Project 25 is all about, it's stated in the book, we want the bureaucrats to be traumatically effective. You all remember when Dodge rolled up in Washington, D.C. and start snatching down names of major government buildings, telling people they're no longer working, sending them emails telling them not to come back to work? In a 2023 speech, when they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they're increasingly viewed as the villains. And remember, they said these people are robbing your government. They said they were going to clean the swamp. They didn't tell you that cleaning the swamp meant that they were going to put catfish all over the daggone White House. Okay? All over the place. Just recently in the news, you saw from days ago, all right, when William McNeil Jr. spoke softly as he made a few brief comments with his family and civil rights attorneys by his side, all right, you know, Brother Crump was there. That day, I just really wanted to know why I was getting pulled over and why I needed to step out of the car, he said. McNeil is a biology major who played in the marching band. Let me see which school. I don't want to make it up. At Livingston College, historically black Christian college in Salisbury, North Carolina. Now, they broke this brother's tooth out of the front of his mouth. They crashed, they broke the glass, and the policeman pulled him out of the car, and then they beat the crap out of him. Let that sink in. And then they got a brother who happened to be the overseer or the visible person in charge of the police department. You all haven't seen the rest of the video. The rest of the video didn't do anything but verify what we saw in the short video. But see, this is what they do with us. They get one of us that they're given a position / job, and then they put the camera on us so we won't know that it's them. How many of you all are old enough to know it didn't matter where you live in the United States? If you were able to read a newspaper before 1969, whenever someone, a melanin dominant person, got in trouble, they would say a Negro or a colored person did blah, blah, blah. And if it was a vanilla brother, a vanilla woman, they would say a young person was arrested or a man was arrested. They wouldn't tell you that it was them. Bill Cosby actually got in trouble for pointing that out. He's going to come up again in a little while. The taboo topic. You're not supposed to talk about it. because it's part of linguistic imperialism. You're not supposed to talk about racism. Europeans and their hegemonic approach continues to coerce linguistic imperialism. I have two good friends, and I'm going to call this brother's name because we haven't spoken in about 20 years, maybe 25, so it won't make that much difference. But if you would Google, you would find that he was in the class of 1975. I was in the class of 1975, going to college, North Carolina A&T. This brother became an artillery specialist. He graduated from West Point. He went to West Point on a full, quote unquote, government-funded training. Now, I don't think I should tell you his name. Well, his first name is Sidney. He graduated in 1975. He was one of two blacks that was in that particular class. It might have been four because, you know, some of those Dravidian brothers with the dark hair, and those they don't classify them the way they classify African American. Why am I telling you this? Sidney was my best friend growing up. But when I went to A&T and he went to West Point and graduated, and some things happened in the universe, we grew apart. Now, why am I telling you this? You don't go to West Point without getting trained, okay? You don't graduate without getting trained. Some of you may not know that there were a number of black colleges, just a few. In the late 50s, they used to have something called a paper bag test. If you're as brown as I am, you had to do a whole bunch of stuff to get accepted into that school. A lot of stuff. Extra special stuff. You feel me? And Howard still overtrains its students. HU, they still overtrain their students because they know they're going out into a racist society. Yet in 1975, in June, the dean at the med school told Dr. Frances Cress Wilson she had to go. She was not going to get tenured. They released her as an assistant professor because she had written the Cress theory of color confrontation and white supremacy. So I'm about to take you into those specific things now about the relationships. Because why am I giving you all this backdrop? If you don't know your narrative or your history, the same thing about a relationship. You're not going to date somebody and hang out with someone that you know got a so-called visible criminal record as big as a old school New York City or Chicago phone book. You're not going to date them if they got a file that big or all kinds of petty crimes. You're not going to date them if they got a file that big of having gone in and out of clinic for a host of different types of STDs and STIs. You need to know their history. And the history must represent the truth of what occurred. And that's why this is one of my favorite visuals, because it summarizes the history of how melanin-dominant males are treated in America. Take note of what you see over here in the 21st century. That's a hypodermic over there, okay? And when you look at the 20th and the 19th and the 18th century, you see lynching. But at the very bottom, you see they have begun to toy with your genetic material. And 17th, 16th, 15th century, you see chattel slavery. So I'm letting you know, America, any questions? Like I shared this with you. Welcome to America. You see that red, white, and blue Magnum? And look at this brother here. Today, if it was dark and not daylight, and there were not so many policemen swarming around him, he may have gotten shot. Because when they were beating the crap out of him while he was on the ground, they said to him, don't resist. I remember what they did to Rodney King, right? Rodney King wound up becoming able to sedate himself with alcohol because they beat that brother so badly and broke so many things on him that he never was back to who he really was. So just to take a dive from these to give you some perspective, because I'm about to dive into something. This is the part of the brain that a lot of African American males operate out of up to age 22 because they want to stay alive. And this is the survival part of the brain. And some of your Asian brothers and sisters and Middle Eastern brothers and sisters, they'll change their name to a name that's easier to pronounce in English because they know they're more likely to be treated well if their name is not Li Wang Fong, i.e. like Li Wang Fong, i.e. Bruce Lee. You're more likely to be accepted. And the whole series, Kung Fu, was stolen from Li Wang Fong, Bruce Lee, and given to a vanilla brother by the name of David Carradine. The Kung Fu series. Bruce Lee wrote those things. But he was a Chinaman or a chink So they didn't want America to know. And then when they finally allowed you to see him, they allowed you to look at him behind a mask as Cato under the green with the Green Hornet. They didn't even want the Asian brothers. And remember, they don't have the kind of melanin that you have. So we're going to talk about family relationships. Leave It to Beaver, American television sitcom. And if you didn't know it, Red Cleaver in reality was bisexual or bona fide gay. But he had to stay in the closet because Hollywood was not going to tolerate no gay man playing the role to represent a paternal figure on American sitcom. His wife, June Cleaver, always dressed like she was getting ready to go to church for regular black people, had on heels in the house, and she was always cooking. And Beaver was a curious vanilla kid. But that was the family that America introduced you guys to. All right? They introduced you to a few more families, but you just wait. This is the family they introduced black people to. You know they did. Now let's tune in to the symbolism here. Unstable black family in poverty. But their theme song was what? Good times. Right? Good times. No job. No sense of autonomy. But they were always having good times. Now I want you to pay attention to the physiognomy, the faces. Take note of who you see here. Look at these smiles. Michael, the non-threatened revolutionary boy child. He was tiny, but he was revolutionary, but he wasn't a threat. Thelma, she became a sex symbol because she could remember she would burn the oatmeal, but she was cute. And Walona was just Florida's friend right across the hall, and they lived in a high rise. James Eden stayed unemployed, but the dad had brawn, and it was questionable about his brains because every now and then Flo would figure something out that he hadn't thought about. See how they portray these people. And note, all smiles, just cheesing. And they killed this brother off the program when they pointed out that he wanted to have roles that allow him to be more representative of African men. But this is the brother that resurrected. You saw him in Roots as Kunta Kinte. Okay? You see how the universe will open the door when one is closed and the ancestors? Now, they've trashed the crap out of this brother, Dr. Cosby. And Bill was so smart that he knew he had to give these people something that they could sink their teeth into. So the Cosby Show was actually identified as a comedy and a fantasy program. Why? Because it was a stable black family with a name that no black people have ever heard of. We're talking about family now. The Huxtables. Are you feeling me? Huxtables. Tell me some black people you know with the name Huxtable. And he saved the network NBC, and Hollywood was tripping because they were like, wait a minute, this lady was a quote unquote partner in a major law firm. Bill Cosby was an OBGYN, obstetrician gynecologist. This dude is delivering babies on TV. But you didn't see the actual delivery, but you saw him. He actually had the opportunity to examine women that would go down to his office, which was in his house. Now, we know Theo just crossed over, all right? Malcolm Jamal Warner. And Malcolm got his name because his daddy wanted to teach him a lesson when he was little. His daddy named him after Malcolm X, and Ahmad Jamal, you know, the phenomenal pianist, musician, jazz pianist, Ahmad Jamal. That's how Malcolm Jamal Warner got his name. And Malcolm said his daddy used to have him reading all kinds of crap when he was growing up, because he was teaching him and giving guidance back to family. We don't have families today, and they trashed the crap out of Bill Cosby. It used to be something in the New African Museum about the Cosby, but I think they took it down. All right? And they also tried to get all these people to trash Bill Cosby, but they didn't. So remember, this is a stable black family, OBGYN, and a partner in a major law firm. Vanilla people said it had to be a comedy. But Bill was smart enough to put a lot of humor in it, but he talked throughout the entire program. And now the average ignorant American recalls Bill Cosby as probably being someone that took advantage of women sexually by giving them a date rape drug. Because that's what they want you to remember this brother as. And the same judicial system that basically said it's done and it's over, they resurrected the exact same thing. They did the same thing after O.J. Simpson with Johnny Cochran. Basically, it was acquitted. They took all the O.J. stuff, and O.J. went to a place, I think it was in Vegas, to get his stuff back. And they arrested him again because the people stole his stuff while O.J. was in and out of the judicial system. You got to understand linguistic imperialism. Now I'm going to take you into a dive so you can get some data on why the relationships are so much a challenge, so we can have time to talk. 2025 database coming from Forbes, the ones that they uploaded online, audited and verified confirmation November 20th at literally at 10:21 a.m. hours. Divorce rates are high among couples below the poverty line. We know why. Living below the poverty line can cause enormous stress, which can have consequences for a marriage. One study found as many as 46% of adults aged 18 to 55 who live below the poverty level have divorced. Now, let's just give you a peekaboo. Now, let's look at divorce rates by so-called race. This stands for melanin-dominant humans and ethnicity, because we're talking about relationships, because relationships are integral to you having a family. So let's take a look. They said they vary by race. And remember, I already told you what race was, humans, right? The divorce rate for quote-unquote white couples is 15.1%. The marriage rate among these couples is 32.1%. Okay, so look at it. Look at couples divorce rate. All right, just a little bit above the quote-unquote marriage rate. But let's look at black folk divorce rate for black couples. 30.8%, and the marriage rate is 17.3%. That's the marriage rate. But look at the divorce rate. The white couple's divorce rate is 15%. All right. The marriage rate among these couples is 32.1%. And the marriage rate for these people is 17%. But look at the divorce rate. So of that 70% that's getting married, a whole bunch of them are getting divorced. Now we have to include our Latino brothers and sisters. 18.5%. All right. And the marriage rate is 33.2%. But let me just highlight something for you where I put the green, that means pay attention to. See what's happening with these Asians? Asians, Americans have the highest percentage of marriage, 65% married. They also have the lowest percentage of divorce rates. We won't talk about what they've done to these people. Wait till you see what this does to relationships. Look, median income, that's like 50% level in the middle there. Because you don't want to get confused with the mean, because you could take the mean and include some of these superstar athletes and all that money they're making. It will skew the data set to make you think people make more money than they actually make. So you use the median. Look, the median for every dollar in wealth for the median for vanilla brothers and sisters, white family. Look, see, they get the whole dollar. Look at what the black person get. You get about a third of the dollar. You get 31 cents of the dollar. The Latino, Hispanic, 34 cents. Now look, for every $1 in wealth the median white family had, check that out. The median black family has 17 cents, which means they were living from paycheck to paycheck. And your Latino brothers who came along after you, they now have 19 cents. Check that out. They have 2 cents more than you do. But let me share with you what's going on. Look at the black and Latino or Hispanic or your Mexican or your brown brothers. Look at the wealth gap. 2019, just before the pandemic. Look at the white people, the vanilla people. Damn. Look at the amount of money. The wealth gap. The wealth gap. 64.9%. These people got plus 3.5. So let me simplify this for you. Let's look over here, because this particular graphic will summarily share with you what's going on with this graphic. Because we can't even talk about all others. They stick everybody in there. But notice they didn't stick the Asians here, because they put the Asians here, you will find that they have more money than these people. And they never like to let you see that the Asians have more money than they do. All right? But remember, the Asians are married. They're holding their families together. They're not spending their money in divorce court. They're not debating with each other. They're not stretching out a little bit of money, buying extra wine and liquor to cope with the stress of dealing with racism. And they're not giving their money to these mega churches. Are you following me? So check this out. Black families, likelihood of having at least 1 million, likelihood, that means in life, is less than 2%, all right, of them actually building some wealth. Because the majority of our people are renting. They're not buying because they don't either have the resources to buy, or they're discriminated against the ability to buy, and they make less money than to buy, and they may not have the kind of credit score to actually get somebody to finance them. Look at my brown brothers and sisters, more than these black folk. And you see white people, they have it even, right? The 15% are likely to have some serious wealth, and 15% are likely not to have. But these people here, you see the difference? Why is that the case? This is why it's the case. You look at life expectancy and diseases that happen to people, you get snatched out of the workforce if you didn't get locked up, incarcerated. And this is in DC just before the pandemic, because it increased after the pandemic. Differences in life expectancy in the District of Columbia. Black male, 68.8 years. That means after you retire, you might have 3 years where you can collect your debt, not even retirement. You're not even going to get your Social Security for no more than 2 years on the average. Look at the white males. They get to live long enough to get their Social Security benefits. Look at the black female. I want you to know this is a design. And she's going to outlive the brother. But she still is going to live almost a decade, not as long as these people. And they're also more likely to have a host of different types of diseases. So how can your family be intact? How can you take care of your people if your money ain't right? Look at the U.S. total population. So you need to know this about family. Break it out. I put these lightning bolts here to tell you something about. You see the vanilla people? Look at, these are the people, they make up this part of the overall population. You see this orange bar? They make up that part of the overall population. But look at 50% of them share of the population experiencing homelessness. These people here make up about 14% of the population, and they double plus about 2.5 times of them are homeless. How you gonna have a family if you're homeless? I was dating a fine sister a few years ago, and I cracked a joke on her. And I said, would you come check on me if I wound up being homeless? She said, yeah, I'll come check on you, but I wouldn't date you. See, nobody want to be kicking it with nobody ain't got nowhere to stay. You can ask some of these educated black women, they'll give you a serious beatdown about relationship if they talk to a brother that's gainfully employed. God forbid he come out of his mouth and say, I live at home. I still live with my parents, but I have my own place in the basement. They say, you live at home? Next question is going to be, what kind of car do you drive? Is it yours? And while the average black man that doesn't understand relationships may spend $250, $300 plus on a pair of sneakers, $250, $300 on a jersey, and doesn't understand how important it is to figure out how to save a little bit of his change. And look at the Latinos. You guys may not know it. Black people in America used to be the largest minority. But now we are a minority to our Latino, Chicano brothers and sisters. They make up about 20% of the population. We make up about 14%. And I don't need to tell you what happened to these people here, the Inuit people and the indigenous people that live in the United States of America. But I'm going to show you a reverse metric here. Look at the Asians here, right? You look at share of population experiencing homelessness. They're not out on the street. But when you see these brown people here, if you go to Maui, Hawaii, the Polynesian Islands, man, this is systemic, all over the world, global, systematic system of racism and white supremacy. So you're definitely going to have problems in your relationship if you ain't getting paid. Let me get us down to this part where we can get to these questions, because I'm going to take us down for another 5 minutes so we can talk. Look at the white family. Median family income. I showed you a little while ago, but I want to break it out so you can have some clarity. Median family wealth today is like, how much wealth do you actually have? In the median, not the mean, which is the average. The median is where are most of the people, all right? At least 50%, all right? Look at the Latino. There's almost doubles the blacks. Now, I don't need to tell you that my Latino brothers, brown brothers, they work hard. And a lot of black people, they could be returning citizens and have been incarcerated. So nobody wants to give them a job, even though the language say you're not supposed to check the box if you've ever been incarcerated. You all may not remember when the crack epidemic was around all over the place, 80s up into the 90s, or Obama kind of cleaned it up a little bit with Eric Holden. Black people would get more time for having a few rocks of crack than a white boy would get for having a half an ounce of real cocaine on his person. So summarize this for you. The median black family income today owns $3,600. Just 2% of the 147,000 of wealth the median white family owns. The median Latino family, it doubles the black, just 4% as much. So something is wrong with how these people are getting paid. And that's tied to racism. And I'm going to start summarizing you why. Remember when I showed you that little slide about the family, them redefining the family? Yeah, I'm about to get in. What's the brother's name? The congressman? The little short brother that crossed over? What's his name?
John Lewis.
John Lewis said very clearly, I'm about to get in, we're going to get in some good trouble now. And what I'm telling you now is good trouble. Because it's inconsistent with linguistic imperialism. You see that, family? You can basically use the silhouettes of their shadows and conclude that these are Caucasoid in their phenotype. Population control bill. All right? Yes. Keep these people on point. Make sure they get what they need. No, we don't want these people here. Here is my formula. This is my formula. So you see it somewhere else? Yours truly created this formula. The 4MPC equation. You guys may not know, it was a movie released in '97 called Gattaca. All right? And Gattaca was about genetic engineering. So I want you to know the 4MPC protocol formula. This is how it works. Money, I just showed you the breakdown. Mayhem, melanin, and mass population control. You guys are alive and well while exercises are being taken place right now on this planet that deals with mass population control. Genocide is happening as we speak. You don't know it's genocide because of the way it's happening in Haiti, because they say they don't have a government. You don't know it's genocide because of the way it's happening in Central Africa. But Britain, i.e. the UK and France and Germany, have basically said what's happening in the Middle East is genocide. And that's in the news. But you're going to get more information about what's going on and with the Ukrainian people than you're going to get about what's happening to the people in Gaza. John Lewis, evoking your spirit. Brother, you know I'm walking that line of good trouble. Yurugu, Anna remembers work. Those people that do not have a soul. It's a term in Sanskrit called Adharma, avidya. I don't have it in front of you now. Adarma, Advida, Adharma, avidya, which means those without souls, or those that are connected from humanity. That's what Yurugu is all about, even though it's like an encyclopedia. But remember, dropped this bad boy, what, about 3 decades ago? It's got to be over 25 years ago, right? And she talked about maybe 20 plus years ago. Now, I want you to know, if this is how they treat their own people, why do you think the industrial prison complex is so viable? Why do you think this movie was released, was called Moonraker, James Bond? Look at all of these people that are being transported to another place to live. They're all Caucasian. They told you in the old Bond movies. You can find the movie. It's called Moonraker. They were saving all the vanilla people. The eugenics crusade. What's wrong with perfect? Blue-eyed. All these kids. Blue-eyed. They look like they're clones. Make people better. as Gods, a moral history of the genetic age. This is a book, Control. So this is what Dr. Wilson told us. It's about the genetic survival, Public Enemy, fear of a black planet. And if your relationships are stable, like the Asians, you can have and produce healthy children. If you haven't produced healthy children, they're going to have more children. But if you are not even interested in adopting and you want to marry someone just like you can love who you want, but at least go and adopt some of these brown and black babies. You feel what I'm saying? You can love who you want. You can engage in all kinds of intimacies with who you want. That is your prerogative. But 2 men and 2 women not going to make no babies. Are you following me? But you can adopt some, and you go down to the sperm bank and get a sample, or you can get an ovum taken from another woman, or a series of eggs placed inside of you. So Dr. Wilson made it very clear. Now I'm going to summarize and I'll talk to you about the chakras. These are the chakras that are incredibly strong. Black people break up. They divorce in relationships because sometimes you marry someone and you might even have a conversation about it. Look, baby, we're not spending enough intimate time together. I'm telling you, we're not spending any intimate time together. And I just want you to know that if we don't start spending intimate time together, I'm going to start exploring other places to spend intimate time. And you cheated on me. We got a divorce. You don't even have enough money in your bank to take care of your basic needs, but you're going to hire some lawyer to go in and get a divorce. And now you got 2 households to support. I'm not saying stay with somebody that you don't love, but if I were to break down the statistics for you, women that are in abusive relationships stay in those relationships longer than women stay in relationships when one or the other is cheating on the other. Cheating meaning they've explored a relationship outside the relationship. But Dr. Wilson made it very clear. This particular part of your body is a strong part of your body because it allows you to procreate. So it's very strong. And that's one of the reasons why a Caucasian police officer are always trying to kick a brother in the groin, hurt them in the groin, injure them in the groin. If you were to back up about 15 to 20 years, you find Diallo in New York. After they shot the brother so many times, they did a bunch of stuff. They even raped him with one of those batons. So let's kind of move into the zone of comments and questions as I'm telling you about these people were telling us literally in 2015, MIT's cover, we can now genetically engineer the human race. And this brother specializes in studying butterflies. He pointed out in his new book that we need to be mindful of genetically engineering the human race. He pointed out back in '69 and in a later book in the 2000s that they need to control the population. And I don't need to tell you about how we're using water as a weapon. It's even being used right now in the news as a weapon, and we don't even discuss it. But you'll get something like this that they're now telling us we're not supposed to talk about, diversity. So the terrorism issue. When these folks do some crazy crap, see, mentally ill. When these people are remotely associated with anything that they can remotely associate with terrorism, they are terrorists. So melanin is in the equation. So let's kind of take a dive into some comments and questions. And I want you to know why it's so difficult to have a viable family, because we have allowed Europeans to define what our families are. And in so allowing them to define what our families are, we use their values to determine how we navigate our relationships. So let's see if we have some comments or questions. Comments are always 100% welcome. And I wanted to make sure that we had at least about half an hour plus to make comments and questions. But I do want you to know that you need to revisit breaking up your family. But if your family is toxic, if you can't get any counseling to preserve it, you should at least sit down and talk about it. And you also need to understand that one of the few things that a lot of Black people truly enjoy is intimacy. And that intimacy, contrary to popular belief, overrides the intimate relationship you might have with your pastor in his or her interpretation of the Bible. So let's take a dive into some questions and comments, or some comments in particular. Or somebody might even want to share some observations. So let's do this. Let's engage in that now.
Thank you, Dr. Koko, again for presentation that is always educational, always consciousness raising, and always to the benefit of African people, not just for now, but for the future. Well, now speaking of the future, now we've been told that society has gone post-racial. We've had a black president, and so why should we be worrying about all these things that you mentioned here today? Since we're in this post-racial society.
Unfortunately, that's back to linguistic imperialism.
There we go.
When you allow these people to define your reality, you have agreed to have an early eulogy. You have agreed to have an early eulogy. Now, Kwame Ture used to tell people that you must have an organization. I say it over and over again. I do not know what has possessed the Congressional Black Caucus. I do not know what has created a damper on the Black Bar Association and some of these visible black organizations. I do not know what has happened to them. But anytime you speak our reality, you take a risk. John Lewis, good trouble. Now, you know, I told you these folks were cheesing. And Barack was the president. And because Barack was the president, a lot of black people didn't know that in J.A. Rogers' book, there were 5 to 7 other black presidents. And I'm not going to try to retrieve them now, but Abraham Lincoln was one of them. He was mixed. All right? Eisenhower was mixed. Why am I telling you this? It's because we allow the linguistic imperialists to define for us our reality by repeating the words that they use. And the words that they use are literally designed to enslave us. So Barack couldn't do 0.0001% of the things that Donald Trump is doing. They even called him a liar on the Senate floor. They created all types of imagery of him being, quote unquote, associated with rhesus and macaque monkeys and gorillas. They said the same thing about Michelle. They even implied that Michelle was not all woman. Are you feeling me? So what I'm getting at is Americans don't know that the president means to preside over whatever is an agreement by the sponsors of congressmen and senators. And whatever is an agreement by congressmen and senators is usually put in place by those individuals that finance their campaigns. All right? And those individuals that finance their campaigns make decisions about who they are going to elect by the amount of money that they put into the equation to get them elected. Like most Americans don't believe that this last election was purchased. It was bought and paid for. They really think that because Kamala's quote unquote team didn't do an excellent job, she lost. She didn't lose, we lost. And we lost because we failed to understand the game. And a little while ago, when you made a reference about Barack being the president, remember, the president presides over. That's what the president's job is. Presides over the decisions that are incubated in Congress, signed off on in Senate, and they become a bill and people act on those things. But the Congress and the senators are the ones that have the major power. That's why you see people saying back and forth. And the only other entity in this country that has buku power are your Supreme Court justices. And Donald got 4 of them working for him. So remember, presidents preside. They preside. I wrote a book about Obama. It's called OMG, The Awakening. Oh my God, the president is black. And I said some things about the brother in the book, The Awakening. Oh my God, the president is black. And I gave him credit where he could get credit. But I very carefully, diplomatically pointed out that he's one man. And if you think one man can save this country, just like people think that the Donald is making all of these decisions. That dude ain't making these decisions. That dude is acting on decisions that were already put in place. And I'm going to remind you again by showing it to you. These people. The Project 25. He's executing a plan that they already developed. And this is my satirical joke to remind her about the Democrats.
Mm.
This albino damn donkey here, let's talk about it until the next election. This man is rounding people up like cattle with no ID, picking up your brothers and sisters off the streets. And it's not him. It's these guys that signed off on allowing it to happen. Now, if you hear anything about me being suicidal, it's a damn joke. I don't eat meat. I don't excessively drive recklessly. Excessively mean I'm a very careful, assertive driver. All right? I don't have firearms in my house, so I'm not suicidal. You follow me? And I don't hang out in high-risk environments. The high-risk environment for a black man is literally having black skin, dark skin, and probably having a book in his pocket of a title that mainstream America thinks you should not have, or walking around with a sense of identity and his head is upright over his spine. That is a threat. So talk to me. Hopefully someone else has a comment or another question. Doesn't mean I know the answer. One of the elders can answer the question.
Dr. Koko?
Yes, sir. I know this is Baba Heru, correct?
Yes, there was a discussion about how with all these apps, these social media apps, with the attention span, that's another way of racial control, where they provide false narrative and information, and then the students attention span is decreased to a point where they can't absorb any truthful information.
That's a fact, but let me share something with you. To a great degree, this whole phenomenon that they call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that's a new term that they put in place to take place of the original terms that used to be referred to as minimal brain damage, which was replaced with minimal brain dysfunction. And then it became generically referred to as a learning disability. And then they began to carve out language that would make Caucasian parents more comfortable. And so they said they had a hyperactivity disorder. Then they said an attention deficit disorder, so that they could justify making available to these kids Ritalin to please pharmaceutical companies, right? So the saturation with imagery in computers does three things. First of all, the average African-American child that is healthy is able to encode and process a lot more information than the typical Caucasian child. That's a fact. Whether people want to debate about it doesn't matter to me. And typically the average African-American child, they walk faster, they have better motor dexterity skills when they're developing. But as they develop, people don't give them as much information as the Caucasian kid gets in terms of cognitive stimulation and exposure to words and things like that. And when you do get an African-American child or an African child, that's really bright and tuned in, we'll refer to him or her as being gifted, or they have some kind of special talent that other kids don't have. But the bottom line is what you just said. If you are a kid and you've been playing video games and you're in front of a computer and you can transduce, you can pick up a lot more electromagnetic energy than other kids, you're literally going to find yourself not focusing on one thing in particular. I say to you today, probably about 40% of all educated blacks with smart TVs and smartphones, they have attention deficit disorders. I've seen educated black people damn near walking off the damn, what you call it, the rails at the metro when you're about to walk off the platform. Yeah, the platform, because they're on their damn cell phones. I've seen people with their earbuds and they're walking into traffic. I'm talking about adults, all right? And so when you put that kind of visual imagery in front of a kid attached to music, how are they going to pay attention? And they have in the back of their head, they're ready to go play another video game, or they're trying to find a fast video game to play. And more importantly, with the algorithms, most of the places that you visit online with your devices is usually a small outlet click that you have to click to leave that particular screen. And if you click the wrong one, it'll take you deeper into the screen. And deeper as you go into the screen, there are more things to distract you. Algorithms do that. And as those algorithms do that, all you have to do is order something online, and your phone and your television will start showing you advertisements of something similar to what you ordered. So we as adults, all of those things that you just mentioned are tied to what we call neuromarketing. And neuromarketing is the ability to bypass your effectors, which means literally your vision, but to go beyond your vision and get into the network of your brain and rekindle memories of things that you like or you're affiliated with, and it will guide you down that track with an algorithm. And if you don't have the presence of mind, you will not be able to get away from it. It's just like if you go online now to your Facebook or whatever you go to, advertisements may pop up of things that you looked at some time ago. That's by design. And because the child's brain, matter of fact, the adult brain doesn't even fully mature until you get into your late 20s. I'm talking about the frontal lobe, the part of the brain that allows you to make decisions. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself all the time. It's called neuroplasticity, but it doesn't really mature until you are 28 to 30 years of age, which means you have the ability to engage in the illusion of free will because you can process certain things. But these people are working on that. That's why you see this incredible colossal brain here with all of these connectors and servers, and you see this eraser erasing your brain and replacing your brain with what they want inside of your brain. That was an excellent observation you made. And if you'd like to expand on it a little further, feel free to do so. And again, I encourage anyone that has a comment or a question to share your comment or question, because in the past, people have gone on the other side of 2,200 hours, and I want people to have an opportunity to make a comment or a question.
I have a question or comment about you started out with linguistic imperialism.
Yes, sir.
And everybody was seeing images of genocide, but people don't know that there was a Holocaust, or they never talk about the Holocaust that's taking place in the Congo and continues, where more than 20 million people have died, in my lifetime. The other thing is that since I've been born, 4 million people in Korea died, 1.3 million people in Vietnam died. We have the Rwanda, that was almost 1 million people. What's going on in the Sudan, and et cetera, et cetera. And there's no guns manufactured in Africa. And we're killing ourselves. There's no guns owned by any black company that I know. But we don't love ourselves, so we keep shooting ourselves. And that's and that's the imperial linguistic that you're talking about. I like that. But the other thing that I'd like for you to emphasize is, I don't know, Dr. Spock, and people follow Dr. Spock and how to raise people. And it's rough for single parents. And sometimes some of our new parents want to be friends with our kids instead of parenting a kid. Sometimes it's because we started too young. Dr. Wessing always say, you really should get married like when you're around 30, etc. For all the good reasons that she emphasized. And anyway, I'd like for you to comment on those things, please.
I will. I just saw someone from Samsung. Maybe they're gone now because they just popped on the screen and popped off the screen. So I don't know if they can hear us now, but that person had their hand up and it just went away. I don't know where. I don't even know if that person can hear us now. But that person was there and they had raised their hand to make a comment or question. But I just want to reiterate, if in fact that person comes back or wherever that person is, maybe the camera just went off or whatever. But I started off by sharing with you that Dr. Ayo Sakai's term. She's the one that coined the term linguistic imperialism. And I said that I was going to build on it because it is literally tied to whatever we discussed. Her name is Dr. Ayo Sakai, right? And she actually is a publisher. I couldn't actually give you information for her, but you could take her name. They're literally off the screen. Dr. Ayo Sakai, independent black publisher. And I'm letting you know that that term, linguistic imperialism, is a term that she coined and she did research on. And I wanted to use it because it literally speaks to what you see highlighted here in inherent constrictions of the acceptable lexicon to discuss melanin dominant humans' reality, as endorsed crippling jargon, and it's a function of linguistic imperialism. So I want to make sure she gets her props. So the things that you just mentioned, you may have heard me make a comment earlier when I talked about what the news coverage would focus on. And I said to you, As a matter of fact, even though it's a Western news network, occasionally I have to look at the BBC News because Al Jazeera doesn't come on television anymore, so you have to find it online, Al Jazeera News, and you find BBC covering. Like a little while ago, I made reference to Germany and France and the UK basically telling the United States that they are passively sitting by while genocide is taking place. But when you pointed out what's happening in Central Africa, and we're pointing out what's happening where brown people live, I'll be candid with you. These people don't give a damn. And they don't give a damn because it's intimately tied to what I shared with you earlier. And what I shared with you earlier, this is what they want the family to be. They don't want the family to be literally representative of brown and black people. They would prefer for the family to morph into something like this or something like that, because it's a lot easier to control the delivery of human offspring if you have these kinds of groups in place. And I'm not knocking these people. I'm just talking to you about a larger global agenda. And that global agenda takes us literally straight away back to like this. It's, for example, everybody that was a member of Livingston's College band, marching band, should basically get together and make a video of that band, and someone needs to be singing a song they can be playing and marching to what they do to black men. You don't say jack. That's why I say I'm doing that dance, and that dance is John Lewis's dance. It's called the dance of good trouble. As a matter of fact, if I were going clubbing, I'll make up some moves and some steps around good trouble. Some of the gestures will probably be like leaning over like your head is about to be severed from your body, like you're about to be decapitated. Some of it would be putting your hands back like when the alpha wolf has taken control over the other wolf in the pack and puts his throat up like the dog or the wolf is winning. Because we need to be reminded of where we live. You remember when Sister Venus's Sister Williams, basically was doing the they call it the Crip dance during the Super Bowl, and they were upset about her doing the dance.
Yeah, Serena.
Yeah, Serena was making the steps, and they're like, "How dare her do that dance?" And she's basically like, "I wish I knew that the Crip is an acronym for something. I've forgotten what it is, but if you Google it, you find out exactly what it's for. Crip is an acronym that relates to black folk policing and taking care of themselves, right? But when she did the Crip dance, they tripped out because they're always distracting us. That's back to linguistic imperialism. So when you pointed out like what happened in Rwanda, I remember when they made the movie Hotel Rwanda, all right? The Kikuyu were basically being slaughtered and butchered with machetes and things like that. But oftentimes, we don't know who's behind this crap. We don't know that Anwar Sadat, when he was taken off the planet, we don't know that when Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi used to be friends of the United States. But when Gaddafi started trying to tell folk how to handle their money and manage their money, and Saddam Hussein, people could get a free education over there. These people, the media, that is linguistic imperialism. That's why I say I'm taking a deep dive into this damn good trouble now. And I don't like to take dives into trouble just for the sake of sensationalism for folks to tell me, brother, that was deep, that was heavy. What are we going to do with the information? This brother actually had his front incisor upper tooth completely broken when the policeman that broke his glass, basically stoned him literally as they were throwing him to the ground. And this happens all the time, people. And I wish I knew where that person went that had their hand up a little while ago. But the bottom line is, Dr. Wilson said it, I'm only repeating it. You're in a war. And until you realize you're in a war, you're going to constantly think you're dreaming. And while you think you're dreaming, these people are going to have you in a state of belief. That's in this book. It's going to drop. I don't tell you how many months it's going to drop. This book about the power and the illusion, and the confusion surrounding death. All right? Because people really believe that when they cross over, that's the end. I guarantee you, even though we don't have a lot of people in front of me on this platform, I bet you half the people here have had some kind of communication or contact with a loved one or relative or a dear friend that told them that somebody that passed came to visit them. It could be a smell. It could be a unique happening in the household. It's something strange. that you can't phantom because Western scientists have not figured out how to handle that energy that cannot be created or destroyed. And I'm in the process of finishing up something I'm writing about it right now. Does anyone else have a comment or a question? But remember this. This is why I told you. This is what America put in front of you as the family with television. And after that, they introduce you to a dog that could do surgery. Lassie could do every damn thing a human could think about doing. All right? They even had that horse, that white horse, who was basically a version of the black horse that a black man had that was so smart and gifted that Hollywood created a story version of it called Mr. Ed the Talking Horse. And they made the horse white. All right? Which was based on some true stories. Not that the horse was talking, but the horse understood a lot of things. And it was a black dude that owned the horse, and Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, tried to buy this horse from this man. He wouldn't sell it. And later, I could probably send somebody the link about this brother if they don't snatch it and make it difficult to find. But no, this was the white family. She looked like she was ready to go to church every day he came home. And this was what they introduced to you as a black family. And then when they introduced you to another black family, they introduced you to a lady, I've forgotten her name. Is her name Julia Child? No, it's not her name. She played, he had a son named Corey, and it was a movie about a black, Julia, Julia, a black woman on television. Her husband had died in Vietnam. Her son didn't have a daddy. You feel me? So they brought a black woman back, but he didn't have no daddy. And then they dropped these people on you, and this brother was so real and spontaneous, but the only thing they showed you indicative of his strength, he could go play pool, all right, which was his hustle, but he couldn't get a job. And they lived in a high rise, and the wash and dry were downstairs on the lower level. And if you guys didn't know it, Stanford, some researchers from major universities created the projects to study the behavior of brown and black people. That's why they put them in a high rise, so they could watch them, observe them, see their behaviors. And note, like I told you before, they all cheesing. And I ain't got nothing against them because they were actors and actresses, right? And Bill Cosby. You ask anybody about Bill Cosby, I bet you the second thing out of their mouth going to be, yeah, it's a shame what he did. And I'm not endorsing what he got convicted of doing. And if you didn't know it, the Playboy Club created a whole protocol for date rape drugs. Are you feeling me? They used to call it slipping a Mickey in a woman's drink. So I'm trying to give you some props for this brother, because this brother, a spinoff called A Different World, came from that. And it was all about college life for black kids. People talk to me. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Check the chat, please.
Let me see if I can open it up. Let me see if I can get to the chat. Okay. Yes, it was HBCU. Let's see. I've shared this broad in the UK, Africa, etc. But so many need to see and hear this, not only on Zoom. I suggest all do the same and share this. Our African families need to hear the truth. So hopefully, yeah, I know that was Baba Senghor, Blacktricity. Yeah, Diana Carroll played Julia, Frantz Fanon. And
See what I put in there about CRIP? It means Common Revolution in Progress. That's what it started out as.
Yeah, it's also another variant of it that talked about how these individuals had gotten together to protect their own in the community, to deal with the police. I'm going to have to find that for you. Yes, but it definitely related to Common Revolution in Progress. But it was also an acronym, because remember, the Crips, you had the Crips and you had the Bloods, right?
Right. But I'm saying, but originally the Crips, when they put it together, this is what it meant. And then they developed a dance that basically spelled out Crip.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's what
yeah.
When Serena was like, they were like, how dare you do that? But back to Baba Moses' observation and to relate that to that, SOWS stands for the system of white supremacy. All right?
Okay.
The system of white supremacy, because it's always long. And Dr. Wilson, I mean, just think about that sister. That sister, she told everybody about 60 days. Was it 60 days? Yeah, she told people that Donald Trump was going to be the president. That was one of her last presentations. She said, meet your next president. And she simply said the reason why he was going to be the president is because he talked about the system of racism and white supremacy, and Hillary Clinton did not. Hillary Clinton pimped every black and brown person she could get to talk about injustices in America. I'm not saying something is wrong with her per se. I'm simply saying Kamala didn't talk about it. Kamala didn't talk about what was happening in Central Africa because people don't understand. I said it on my previous presentation. The eagle that you see has two wings. One is Republican, one is Democrat. They're on the same bird. They play games with you during different elections. And then they get into Senate and Congress to manipulate if they get a president that is not likely to do what they want him to do. They get in place to make sure that he does what the billionaire club wants to happen. And so when I told you guys about population control, I'm not making this crap up. I'm incapable of making this stuff up. But I did tell you that a human is a hydrocolloidal carbon-based photobioelectromagnetic transducer, a robot-type eumelanin or pheomelanin, mixed melanin life form, sophisticated colony of bacteria. You are literally human. A human really represents consciousness manifesting through mind. It does consciousness manifesting through mind. It means a shade of consciousness. That's why you have the phoneme in the word human as hue. And man represented consciousness and mind. But crazy diminished vanilla brothers told you that man has something to do with the rib of Adam, all right, giving birth to woman. It's the exact opposite. You follow me? It's about genetic engineering. Did man give birth to himself? No. Mitochondrial DNA takes us back to Leakey. And we didn't come from no apes either. That's some Hollywood crap. So people talk to me, raise some more questions, please. Thank you for sharing Common Revolution in Progress. And there used to be rap music that was conscious oriented. Like when Frantz Fanon and Sheikh Diop, and they pointed out and they spoke extensively about the two cradle theory. You know, if you live in an environment for a few centuries, ain't nothing there but ice. If you were to look at Game of Thrones, you would see these daywalkers, these ice people. They look like they dead. And if you were to Google Rockefeller, you would find some imagery of Rockefeller looking almost like one of those daywalkers. People talk to me. By the way, you see Cosby? You just seeing that teeth. That's just a spontaneous kind of like a smile there. Because I'm telling you, I guarantee you, Bill Cosby has something to do with the imagery of this picture. This brother had a doctorate in education. And the only thing we associate Bill Cosby with now is his $7 million estate in New York. And what you didn't know, they tried to buy from him for the longest. And Bill Cosby and a few other wealthy black folk were getting ready to buy a network. Talk to me, people. Because the family, go ahead.
Baba Koko, if we don't change our miseducation of life that we've been going through, what you see as a future for us 20, 30 years from now?
Ironically, you ask a very painful question to answer. In the past 25 years, black people that used to be the primary largest minority in the United States, we are now beneath the Latinos. Are you following me? Also, the people that were sanitation engineers, that would do your lawn with neighborhood black folk that you knew, now they are your Latino brothers and sisters. And every now and then when I'm kicking with one of them, because I'm definitely not fluent in Spanish, they start speaking back in Spanish if I say a few words in Spanish. And I have to let them know that I'm not able to keep up. The point being, they still have their language. They even have Telemundo. They have television programming in Spanish. I haven't seen any television programming in Kiswahili. Certainly haven't seen any in Mandinga or Casa. I haven't seen those things on American television. And so when you ask what is our destiny, you see these First Nation people here? Look at the breakdown of where they are. 30 years from now, this is 2025, and you add 30 to that, where the crap do you think we're going to be 2055 as a people? I already told you about genetic engineering. I already told you about people having babies and not having babies, and the disproportionate incarceration of our people. So you see these breakdown here? Brother, they're working on it now. They've already gotten us to tolerate a beta test to see how we respond when unidentified people just go around and snatch people from the streets. They're snatching them up. And you don't even know where they go. But you got the average black person saying, Angela Davis and them were talking about this about 40 years ago, if they come in the morning. It's like, if they come knock on your door, you're like, what did they do? They knock on your neighbor's door across the street. What did they do? And then when they come for you, who's there to help you? Because did you notice that when this brother from Iran was arrested in a car in front of his child, it's online now. They arrested this Iranian brother. When they arrested him, he was about 3 to 5 minutes from the daycare center. They asked him for his driver's license. Then they wanted his cell phone. And then they did not identify themselves. That's classic mercenary activity, which means you don't need to know who we are. Somebody hired us to do this. No badges, no insignia, no ID. So what's up for our future? Allah is the best knower. But if we don't start taking some action, I don't mean running around in the street and just waving a flag. I mean some diplomatic, strategic action. You saw what they did to that congressman. You saw what they did to the brother that was on the Senate floor. Tende has a comment or question. Somebody, let's acknowledge her. Whoever has the power, tell her mic is closed. So open up your mic, Sister Tende, and give Tende an opportunity to speak up.
Okay, this is old Mama Tendai over here. Brother, I brought your books. Thank you. I just wanted you to see the last notation that I put in there. On BBC, they had announced that in UK, they have introduced a way in which they have a 3-person embryo to create a more perfect human being. So what they have done is they take the embryo, the fetus, you know, when it first forms.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and they are removing what would be a genetic defect and implanting a 3rd female that doesn't have the genetic markers that would eliminate the child being born with a disease. And they've been successful in being able to do so. So what they do is they take not it, you know, it's when it's still in the zygote, and you know, when it first comes together and forms. Mm-hmm. That's when they have introduced it. And this past week they were successful. They announced it and indicated that it had been successful in about 8 attempts so far.
Well, you know what that means, right?
Yeah, that's the genetic engineering. I was just saying,
You're right.
Along with what you were saying, that they have already done that. And remember back when they did the test tube baby?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I had one in the class one time, and I told her to stop telling everybody she was a test tube baby. She was saying, well, I am in vitro fertilization block. And I'm saying, like, some of these black folk in here might not be able to process what you're saying. They're going to tease you about it. But by the way, you remember when China, they had this special athlete that was really tall and really big, and they had genetically engineered him. So, and you all remember when they did Dolly, they cloned the sheep back in the 90s? Yep. So what you're saying, I've been telling people all along, they think I'm making up crap. They told black people with a joke. They gave you a silly movie called They Cloned Tyrone. And he was eating this jacked up chicken place and what's the brother's name? The comedian brother that was under the weather. You know his name. Help me pull up his name. He plays the piano. He played Ray Charles in the movie.
Winans.
No, it wasn't him. He's talking about when it was Ray Charles. He's talking about
Jamie Potts.
Right.
Jamie,
Jamie. Yeah, Jamie.
Yeah, and when Jamie was kicking it with the guy that was playing Tyrone had been cloned, Jamie was like, hold up, they just blew you away, man. What's going on? So they turned it into humor. And Bill Cosby told people a lot of things that were going on in the world with humor. But if you had an opportunity to chat with Bill Cosby would tell you very candidly what was going on, because Bill Cosby was an I Spy, all right, with Robert Culp, early on playing tennis. So back to your observation about what they're doing with the genetic engineering, they get the marula or the zygote, they take it out, they put it in a healthy lady, and they extract out of it its genetic propensity for that particular trait or anomaly to present itself, and put it in somebody that doesn't have it, with the hopes of making a perfect child. But remember what I just showed you. They're only interested in making these kids. These are the kids they're interested in making. I have some slides that I used years ago, how they used to have it on the tubes in the UK, like our Metro. They would have advertising for sperm donors. And they would be collecting sperm from people. Go ahead, comment.
Brother Cop, you remember Children of the Dam?
Absolutely. Came out in the 60s. These kids that just showed up.
Absolutely. What you just showed. That's Children of the Dam. Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to remind, a lot of folks might not remember that movie, but that was critical.
Oh, Village of the Dam dropped in the late 60s. Yeah. These kids just showed up, right? And all these ladies got pregnant. They tell you what, you know what? I always rub this in. People think science fiction is some crap that's make-believe. Like a little while ago, I made a comment about Nibiru. I made a comment about life forms outside Earth's atmosphere. That's why I always define humans for you. If they have not completely damn near exterminated us down to like 12%, well, we're already at 13% in the United States, but the kind of stuff that they're doing in continental Africa and the organ harvesting that they're doing in places where there are brown people, brown kids on the streets, these white folk are taking organs, growing them in the laboratory, and then creating a signature of those organs so that they can modify it with genetic engineering so that they can duplicate it. You have to understand, a little while ago I made a comment about the chakras and why humans, let me see where the relationships are, right? I hope I can get to it. The relationships are intimately tied to pleasure because that's the guarantee that the species will not die out. You feel me? But we have bypassed that. And I told you, Dr. Wilson says this all the time, genetic survival. And Tende was telling you about the gametes, the sperm and the egg, basically becoming, conception takes place in one woman, and they take it out and maybe put it in another woman that is healthier than that woman. And then she can carry the child to term. But let me tell you something that I didn't have a chance to talk to you about. Go ahead, somebody want to say something? Go right ahead.
One thing you have to be mindful of is that if they change the woman, if they do in vitro fertilization, is where you think about race mixing, is that they are on a bloodline level through the passage of genetic material from one generation to the next, they automatically are deleting the genetic memory of the child. But
you know what's deeper than that? It's like having an old school classic Xerox machine. You have an original copy, and then you make a copy of the copy, and the more you copy it, the more it loses stuff. That's why in Europe and bloodlines, people have like maybe a big ear, or a funny looking toe, or a special thing on their nose, because mutts outlive pedigree animals all the time. Mutts are more resilient. I'm talking about something that's a mixture of this and a mixture of that. And vanilla people's main mistake was, which ironically was our benefit, was when they literally enslaved so many African people during the passage of Ma'afa, that the strong really survived in terms of genetics. And if you were to look at, if you get somebody to come on this program and talk about so-called black inventions, you will find that probably 95% of the things that really benefited mankind were developed by black and brown people. That's why I made a reference to Hidden Figures a little while ago. And when Pharrell did that song about running, and you saw, was that Taraji? Yeah, Taraji's character. She was playing Catherine, the human computer. When she had to run all the way across NASA's from one section to the next section to urinate, the harassment that she got, just think about how creative you can be when you're relaxed. You feel me? And how much they denied her access to things. And then when John Glenn, the Marine, all right, went up, and I think they called it Friendship 7, when he went up in Friendship 7 to go around the world so many times before he landed, he had that sister to check the math because the computer wasn't as accurate as she was. You follow me? So I'm saying to you, the genius is in us, but religion, and I don't want people that are serious Christians think that I'm knocking Christianity, and I'm not. I'm saying to you, you can find some Christians that are also spiritual. A spiritual Christian is going to respect a Muslim and a Buddhist. You feel me? But a diehard person that's wrapped up into their ism is going to tell you that you're not spiritual if you don't believe in what they believe in. And so, as you see highlighted here, genetic survival, only objective, their genetic survival is secondary to their greed. They are greedy. They hoard things because they think that people will treat them the way they treat other people. So that's paranoid. And I hope I have a slide, and then I'm going to stop. I know I have this slide. I put this slide in here to talk about these folk so you can see it. Check this out. This one slide. Black people in particular, under the age of 22. Brown and black people, your Mediterranean people. This part of the brain really goes online, the limbic system, you know, the emotions, how you feel about me. But these vanilla people, this is the part of the brain, the paranoia is down here, but this part of the brain has become paranoid. So their thoughts are indicative of paranoid thinking. They are so, that's why you see this PMRH here. It stands for, look, paranoid. The bottom of the screen, you see it highlighted. I have it highlighted for you. Look at the cursor. Paranoid, melanin recessive human. They're paranoid. Everything they think they cannot control, they try to destroy. If they don't destroy it, they try to make it entertain them to their fancy. Do you remember when Fiddler was always invited to go and play his fiddle or his violin for the white folks party? When they were crazy, they would go and play. They would get Fiddler to come and play. Are you feeling me? So these people, there's something wrong with them. Particularly, when we go off the air, I'll tell you about a particular brain condition that is peculiar, that's tied to pedophile behavior, sexual promiscuity. It's a particular part of the brain that's intimately involved in that. And a lot of it has to do with calcification and not a proper functioning of the hypothalamus and the hypothalamus in particular. I had a slide before I was sharing it with you. We talk about sexual identity disorders. And that's why I highlighted it for you very clearly. You see it highlighted here. You see paranoid? Paranoid. Like that brother that was struck by those policemen, that man didn't have to hit that brother when he was getting out of the car. He called himself asserting some authority and power. His authority and power, it was joined in by the other 6 people in his group. Like when they snuffed the life out of the brother, they choked the life out of him. Black people, they have a job and they think that, oh, I'm going to get in trouble. John Lewis made it very clear. If you don't engage in linguistic imperialism, embrace it, you're already in trouble. It's just a matter of time. This is what a lot of happen to their own people. The people that are close to you in the Middle East. And they don't even show you the footage of what's happening in Central Africa. You don't even get any footage about what's happening in Haiti with all those young women being raped, and they don't have access to health care, and they don't really have a governance down there. I guess between the iridium and a little bit of coltan that might be down in Haiti, they want to make sure they got control over it. But I encourage you to see this movie, Moonraker. And if you look at Village of the Dam or Children of the Dam, the brother was on it.
Dr. Koko?
Yes, sir.
Again, you've thrown out a lot of stuff here. I hope people can gather it up and retain. Well, if they don't retain, we're going to have you back so you can remind. But I just would like to, we've gone beyond our time limit, but here is a question that came through quite some time ago from Brother Patrick, the person that you missed. that disappeared, so to speak. Time is cyclic. Can you define linear and non-linear relative to time? It's in the chat.
That's a heavy question, and that question is intimately tied to physics. And because it's intimately tied to physics, it's going to be a little difficult for me to operationalize. I'm just being very honest and open because of the language tied to it. So let me take you to this slide, and it will help me operationalize my response to that question. A little while ago, let me go to the slide first, because I really need a slide or frame of reference to talk about that, okay? First of all, time is literally relative, number one, because time transcends our understanding of dimensions. That's why I say it's going to be a little difficult to define. When I say it transcends our things related to dimensions, I'm almost at that slide. I need that slide to answer this question. My screen is stuck. 1 second. I'm looking for Sasa and Zamani.
Oh, that's it.
Because it operationalizes what I'm about to take a little dive in.
Yeah, it's close to the beginning, yeah.
Why am I going backwards? See?
Yeah, because that's where it is.
Now that particular slide is, I'm hoping it's closer to the front. Let's see. Because when I showed you Sasa and Zamani, it's at the beginning, the opening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It disappeared on you.
But no, it definitely shouldn't have gone anywhere. I'm going to go in the other direction now. But the bottom line is, when I talked to you about Sasa and Zamani, and the brother was talking about time, time actually isn't linear at all. Time is, ironically, it's spiral and it's cyclic. And there are periods in time that sometimes seem to represent themselves. So when I want to bring to your attention, we don't look at time like, you ever heard of a Kali Yuga, the person that's asking the question? There are cycles of time, 25,000 years, Kali Yuga. I'm talking about periods in the universe when energy shifts. And when energy shifts, energy is always going to shift. I certainly didn't delete that slide, but I'm certainly having trouble finding it now. But nonetheless, it's too difficult for me to define because Europeans have given you this false concept of time they call linear time. That's why I play with this particular joke a lot. Like today is Friday, and you hear someone say, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow," which is Saturday. But Saturday will move and become Sunday when you say tomorrow. All the person has to do is say to you, "I meant tomorrow," and you can say, "Yeah, you told me that yesterday." Europeans have created this linear progression to relate to time because they were obsessed with time, because they would die if they did not plant and harvest in a particular window of time. And if they did not plant their harvest and pull their harvest up by a particular time, they would actually expire. And man, I don't know where it went. I don't know why I can't get to it now. But you do remember I opened this up and I showed you a slide with.
Right, at the beginning.
Yeah, okay, we're getting there. Now, okay. Now we're almost there. You see Sasa and Zamani? Mm-hmm. Now, from a point of physics, which ironically relates to metaphysics, which means to go beyond the physical, and which also relates to esoteric knowledge, when you talk about time, like you could say, well, my great-grandmother, she passed in 2010, right? And then you may go into that room where she used to hang out, and you may sit there and find yourself dreaming about your great-grandmother, and a psychologist may tell you, you're pulling up some memories. And then you say, no, she's warning me about something on my job that's going on at my job, and she passed before this happened. So it's not your imagination. Who's telling you that information? So back to the Europeans' concept of time being linear, one of the first laws of the conservation of energy tied to the first law of thermodynamics. That's why I told you it was going to get a little complicated, because now we're talking about physics, right? The first law is the conservation of energy, which is summarized to mean energy cannot be created or destroyed. If energy cannot be created or destroyed, what happens when someone says they are going to time travel? If the time has already occurred, how can you go back and experience something that already happened? The United States government was doing research with a ship called the Eldridge, all right? I've forgotten the actual name of the research, but it had to do with them shifting something from one dimension to the next dimension. In physics, they talk about these things as a wormhole, and on the edge of a wormhole is something called an event horizon. And when you get into a wormhole, you can move faster than the speed of light. And if you move faster than the speed of light, then time becomes irrelevant. Because if you can move faster than the speed of light, depending upon the dimension that you are moving from one dimension to the next, there is no such thing as time. 0 point energy is now manifesting. So time basically is non-existent. All right? They play with it in the movie called Dune, called Folding Space. They play with it sometimes in classic sci-fi movies when they say someone is jumping, which means they jump from one dimension to another dimension. So as you see Zamani here, Zamani encompasses all there is in the known universe because it dives into what you refer to as the collective consciousness. Europeans have a very limited understanding of that. So what they decided to do was create some tools that they didn't create to allow them to do what you now refer to as time travel. There was a program that came on American television probably about 40 years ago called The Time Tunnel, all right? And it had to do with people traveling through time. So that linear concept of time is restrictive, it's Eurocentric, and it does not include true time because true time cannot be governed by clocks. True time is not governed by cycles. True time is governed by fluctuations of energy across dimensions. That's why I said to you, it's not easy to explain. If you were to look up the word called tachyon, 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 tachyons are pulses of energy that they're experimenting with right now in Geneva, Switzerland. There's something called the Hadron Collider.
Sure.
Well, I know it's time to please stop talking, but the bottom line in a nutshell is I'm trying to say to you that this whole crap about linear time is a European construct.
Thank you, sir.
Baba Koko, Dr. Koko.
Yes, sir.
Another example of time being is cycles in terms of not being linear. If you look at the movie Sinners, when he was evoking time travel, doing a song with the jukebox.
Yep.
That's a perfect example of the cyclical nature of time across culture. One of the reasons why the Europeans, quote unquote, use linear time, that is probably one of their juju in terms of disassociating culture from a cyclical process the African has versus the European, because they actually are creating like false timeline narratives to control people's psyche en masse.
Well, that's what we were talking about a little while ago. We talked about linguistic imperialism. If you don't have a lexicon or language to describe it, that's why I made a reference and I talked to you about physics and I talked to you about wormholes. You're 100% correct. As a matter of fact, there's something called toroidal energy waves. And toroidal energy waves are believed to be related to what people are talking about now when they talk about these so-called, I don't call them spacecraft, but these UFAs, identified flying objects that can shift from one dimension to the next. Right. And that's why I made that comment earlier about, your person that passed, they come and visit you. And some kids that are clairvoyant, that person that you said passed, you could be sitting up worried about them, and that child may say, Grandmama told me to tell you to stop worrying about her. You're making it difficult for her to rest. And they take you to see a therapist. The kid is going to see a therapist like they did in Sixth Sense. They thought that boy needed to see a clinician because he could see on the astral plane. He saw people that had crossed over, and they could actually communicate with him. Because time is not restricted to the Europeans' linear language of saying this happened last year. If someone is grieving, they go through periods when they can get so wrapped up into the grief, they can relive that experience. You can get into a dream that's so deep so dimensional in your dream. And sometimes those dreams are so real, people that really are clairvoyant in real life, they may say, I dreamt that was going to happen. And the reason why Europeans want to keep it in a linear trajectory is because they know that when you delve into time, you can create things to throw the whole synchrony of the universe out of sync. And though they have been doing it, as a matter of fact, what's happening right now with this so-called changes in the weather and climate and stuff, these vanilla people, man, you guys may not remember when they used to do cloud seeding during the time of the Vietnam War. These people have been into modifying the weather for at least a generation plus. Are you following me? But when you bring up stuff like that, I don't want to dive too deeply into good trouble, because particle physics, and I made a reference to the Hadron Collider, the average person don't have a clue what it is and how it works. But it has to do with manipulating time. And as you just pointed out, if people had a vocabulary to talk about those things, they could explain it. If you came to tell one of my clinical friends, I'm going to stop the sentence in about 40 seconds. If you came to tell one of your clinical friends, like, yo, man, I was talking to my grandmother last evening about this lady I met, and she was telling me that she's a good person to talk to. And then somebody say, well, like, man, didn't your grandmama pass about 12 years ago? You say, yeah, she did, but she talked to me every now and then. They're going to send you to see a psychiatrist. And he's going to write you a prescription with some antipsychotic medication. And that's going to screw up your ability to communicate on the astral plane. And then that medication is going to become so nasty that it's going to interrupt your ability of your pineal gland to maintain communication. And then you're really going to be crazy. So Europeans, they know about these things. All right?
Well, one of the things with
and I want to respect the windows of time. That's why I told you cycling.
But Arrow?
This something called digital mathematics, is where instead of numbers on the linear time scale, they use the circular rotation dynamics of numbers.
Brother, I don't know the name of that particular bone that these Africans were using to do calculus and complicated math, like millennia before Europeans crawled out the caves. And then they finally figured it out because there was these carvings on the bones. That was a mathematical system that predates the abacus. And they were doing this type of math. That's why I told you a little while ago about, I put it in my book. Toronto way. But look, you and I can break bread and we can have a detailed one-on-one, but I want to respect the Baba's patience of trying to give people the window to break away, because it's 22:35 hours right now. And you know me, I'm not like locked into the clock, but I want to respect him trying to set things in motion so people can tune into it. But that's why I started off by telling you, it's difficult to talk about. This comment will summarize it all. A number of you saw the original Star Wars movies, right? You remember those little things that were talking in this funny language? Those little, does anybody remember Star Wars? They had these creatures that were talking to these. They were, in other words, some of the words that they were using were not English words. It was a language they thought was made up.
Yes.
Okay. Now, they got some of those terms from old African languages that were predating some of the traditional African languages like Igbo and Yoruba. There were some words that they were using. So the Europeans used those words to make up a language for the movie. Because if you were to look at the Constitution, there were terms and concepts in the Constitution that were not in the English lexicon. So they got them from the First Nation people, the Native Americans, because they had more sophisticated words to describe certain things that were going on. And the last example I'm going to give you, when the Native Americans were trying to explain to Europeans about the alliance among tribes, Europeans realized that they couldn't break them. So on the back of your currency, you see 13 arrows wrapped up. And they was letting them know that when the union comes together as a union, it can't be broken as long as it's united. Because there was a First Nation chief that explained to them by giving them a visual metaphor. He had one person to stand in front of and break an arrow. And then he put a group of arrows together, and then he got all those men together and say, break this. They couldn't break it because the tension from one arrow would transfer over to the other arrow, and then they had combined strength. And that combined strength made it difficult for you to break those things. They had to be severed or cut. And so when you see the eagle on the back of American currency, they are showing you that the eagle claws, they're like a ratchet lock They latch down on what they're holding on to so they don't drop it. It's like a pair of pliers that lock. So Europeans took that knowledge and realized that they could use that to strengthen their union to conquer the First Nation people. So these people, like I say to you, man, collectively, they are Jin. The Jinn, Jin. You all know about the Jinn, right?
Yes.
Yes.
The Jinn are the manifestation of Urugu to walk on the face earth. That's why I told you, Damien, the Omen, we don't pay attention. Tony does the dynamite tours about the truth in plain sight. These people have put right before our eyes exactly what they're doing to the world. And we ain't saying jack. They're literally jumping up, snatching people from the street, blowing people off the face of the earth, killing people right before your eyes, and then telling you, well, these other people just defending themselves. So let me stop, because I told you I always have my energy to bring to the UNIA. All right?
Well, you got into some good trouble, sir.
Yeah, y'all just make sure y'all watch my back.
Will do. Certainly. Dr. Koko, thank you so very much for this presentation tonight. I'll be talking about this for a long time and referring to it for a long time. The information that's in here is information that no one should be without, no one within our community. And we should continue to propagate, because it's necessary that we come into the light of consciousness so that we can be the people who we are supposed to be. Bring back the greatness of our people, if anything is to be brought back.
I have a 15-second comment, and I won't have anything else to say.
Go right.
Remember the laser lights that they would shine in front of cats, and how cats would just go all over the place trying to find that little laser light. That's what the internet and that's what the media is doing to the consciousness and the attention span of melanin dominant people. We are following that light, and we no longer have any awareness of the prize. And the prize is the stability of our family. And that's why I shared with you earlier, Asians, they marry. Asians share their financial resources. Asians guide their children and steep their children in their own culture. We take our kids to the colonizer and ask the colonizer to educate our children.
Thank you. All right, folks. It's been great. Once again, Freedom Friday Forum. This is why we have it. It's the UNIA-ACL RC2020, part of our educational series. Continue. Until next time, I will end this with the motto of the UNIA-ACL RC2020. One God.
One God.
One aim.
One aim.
One destiny.
One destiny.
And for extra, one Africa.
One Africa.
All right.
Race first.
Thank you. Brother Heru, you can close off Facebook and